After a party loses a major election, usually what you have is soul searching and analysis to figure out what went wrong and how it can be corrected. That's not happening this time. Even though Republicans lost the White House, the Senate, and still didn't take back the House, all during the term of President Trump. And of course, you can add Georgia to the list. In 2012, after Mitt Romney lost to Barack Obama, the RNC, they did a 100-page postmortem to try to find out what went wrong and what they need to do different going forward. The RNC chair at the time, Reince Priebus, remember him? He became Trump's first chief of staff. But after Biden beat Trump by 7 million votes, the GOP skipped the autopsy report altogether. Instead, it's tearing itself apart over whether or not to remain the party of Donald J. Trump. Now, we saw the Republican leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, fly down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's ring and probably something else as well. Now, you've also seen Senator Lindsey Graham contorting himself every which way to support anyone named Trump.
The biggest winner, I think, of this whole impeachment trial is Laura Trump. My dear friend Richard Burr, who I like and have been friends to a long time, just made Laura Trump almost a certain nominee for the Senate seat in North Carolina to replace him if she runs. And I'll certainly will be behind her because I think she represents the future of the Republican Party.
Be afraid, be very afraid. Then you have Mitch McConnell, who wants to have it both ways. Republican leader in the Senate, who now represents the minority party, thanks directly to Trump, voted to acquit Trump Saturday, but then he denounced him from the Senate floor. I want to bring in my guest to discuss. Mark Salter. He's a longtime aide to late John McCain. He also wrote a book about the late senator called The Luckiest Man, Life with John McCain. Mark, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Good to be here.
You know, I heard a soundbite today from Pennsylvania speaking about what Senator Toomey, one of the 7 Republican senators, and his vote of conscience. And I'll give it points for credit. I'm going to play it for our audience. There isn't any attempts at deception. He says exactly what he believes, if you're a Republican, your fealty should be.
We did not send him there to vote his conscience. We did not send him there to do the right thing.
Lindsey Graham believes, and unfortunately Lindsey might be right, that McConnell, who usually can play chess when others are playing checkers, he's not doing the math right here. More people in the Republican Party want to stay with Trump than want to condemn him. How about the mathematics that are going on behind the scenes that Republicans have to calculate?
Well, I think McConnell's taking the right view that while you have to prove your Trump bona fides in a Republican primary still, apparently, you can't win a general election that way. If you have a bunch of MAGA crazies picking strange nominees like they did in 2010, pre-Trump, obviously, but the Tea Party unacceptable candidates who all lost. The good news is, if there is any good news, at least there's a fight beginning, a fight that I think has been delayed, over the 4 years of Trump's presidency. But at least McConnell and other smart people realize that you can't win national elections if the suburbs are all voting against you, which is what happened in the last election.
For me, Mark, a lot of these are people that I'll either talk through a box or, I'll play a soundbite from, but these people. Lindsey Graham, does he know better, or is he all in? Does he really believe Trump's the future of the party?
Oh, I think Lindsey probably rationalizes the things he says, saying, well, if I've got influence with Trump, I can make him 10% less awful. Well, that's a proposition he's lost over and over again over the last 4 years, but I guess he keeps trying. You'd have to ask him really what his motives are, but it's pretty discouraging.
For anybody who thinks that this is a decision that 43 senators couldn't get to, but that's the universe, they got to look at the state party level. And you know this better than me, Mark. In the aftermath of the riots, what some of these state parties were saying and the fealty they demanded, and now the censures that are coming down, it's crazy. How much of a problem in terms of a reckoning does the GOP have to do at the root level of this, not just folks in the House or the Senate?
State parties aren't what they used to be. I think one of the reasons they're not are changes in campaign finance law. But many state parties have the people who have turned the Republican Party or are intent on turning the Republican Party into a cult of personality, they have one abiding resource, one strength. They show up. So they run for these precinct committeeman slots, and they can control the parties. They're largely ignored by the office holders, and they have very little impact. John McCain has had off and on problems with the state party when he was alive. Obviously, we sort of cleaned out some of them at one point, but we've had kind of recurring problems like that because they show up, and the people that show up in the general election or even on the primaries, your Main Street Republicans, your Chamber of Commerce type Republicans, your suburban Republicans, they don't run for those offices. So they're largely in the hands of the irresponsible and the deluded, and they have succeeded in many states. The state party itself has become, just a Trump party. It's like not having any platform at a convention other than whatever Donald Trump says we believe. That's what we'll believe. Or like that poor deluded gentleman in Pennsylvania said, you're not there to do the right thing. You're there to be for Trump, which implicitly means the wrong thing. Well, the important thing is there is a argument going on, at least within senior Republican elected officials, led by Mitch McConnell, that we can't continue to be dominated by Donald Trump or we'll lose elections. There may be 75% of Republicans that want Donald Trump in polls to be a prominent figure in the party, but there's a 20 to 25% who don't. And when you add that to the Democratic and the independent vote against them, it's ruinous politically.
Mark, I'm a little close to folks on the New York side that would be involved with both on the state level and from the Manhattan DA's office. Trump's got a lot of problems when these cases come to fore, plus you add on top of that Georgia and a litany of other cases that are in the offing. Is there any revelatory damage that can come to him that will finally break the fever? Or even if they shunt Trump to the side that he's just too toxic, somebody else is going to just jump in his place, whether it be a Marjorie Taylor Greene? I mean, is there a cult of personality unique to him? Or is your fear that somebody else just fills his place, even if he's deemed unelectable?
I think it's largely unique to him. The problem, 68% of the country in a poll I saw today believes Trump was culpable to some extent for the events of January 6th. You can't win with a guy like that, but I don't think anybody else, we're going to see in the midterms if the devotion of so many Republican grassroots will turn out in a midterm election. They didn't in Georgia, and I'm not sure they will in the midterms, but we'll see.
How much, Mark, does money matter? And by that I mean, there's going to be a certain point where people aren't going to keep writing checks to candidates that they're afraid, A, don't represent them, or B, could get them in trouble if elected. At a certain point, I know you mentioned the state parties, they really don't serve their purpose, or at least the influence they used to, but on a national level, can the party draw lines here in dollars and cents?
Well, I think they're losing donors, and I think that's part of the pressure and probably part of the motivation of Senator McConnell and others to start, leading us gingerly away from Donald Trump. I think, most responsible donors to the party have had enough of this nonsense. Donald Trump was an unfit. He proved that for the office. He proved that every day he was in office, and he abetted, aided, encouraged an insurrection against the constitutional order of the United States. It's intolerable. Most people that have made a lot of money are pretty smart people, and they realize that. I think Trump himself can raise a lot of small donor money, but he usually misspends it epically, as he did in this last election, and I'm sure some of it will be on, to benefit himself and nobody else. But he's got his own money woes. His golf courses are all in trouble. And, you would think he'd have better fish to fry. But I suppose he'll stick around and try to torture our politics as much as he can for a while longer.
Finally, the Times did a piece with Adam Kinzinger, and they even got into some of the family dynamics that literally, because he had the temerity to vote his conscience and break with Trump, his family doesn't consider him a real Republican anymore. You go back, I'm not trying to date you, but when people talk about pray to the altar of Reagan, Reagan wouldn't recognize Trump or the Republican Party today. Can you just give a little context just how far off the reservation the current party is from where it was?
I mean, we were an optimistic party, a growing party, a party that, welcomed immigrants, party that wasn't, Trump is just a demagogue. There's nothing conservative about him. They've been coming around and through our politics since we've been a country. He gives people a scapegoat to blame their problems on. That's the secret to his success. It's the liberal media or immigrants or Muslims or Democrats, or Nancy Pelosi or whoever have done this to you, and but he does nothing. He gives them nothing. He hasn't made their lives any better. He totally mishandled. You couldn't have handled COVID worse than he could. So, competence in government, a smaller but more efficient government, free trade, a welcoming party to, not just immigrants to the country, but to, that tried to recruit people to our ranks. All that went out the window with Donald Trump.
And thank you, Mark. And I was thinking before the interview, and I was reading both a lot of your book, but also some of the things you said. The guy you worked for and the guy who just lost and just put this country through so much, I don't even know if they share even the title of Republican anymore, but I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
When we come back, I will be interviewing a Texas congresswoman. I'll be asking the Democrat just how united the Democrats are over a $15 minimum wage and the stimulus package, what it's like to work with Republicans across the aisle who people wonder worked with even some of the rioters in the lead up, and also a lawsuit just brought by our colleague against the President of the United States. All that and much more after this.